I spent much of my youth learning how to make myself small, not because I wanted to, but because the air around me suggested it was the right thing to do. Desire not just sexual, but the desire to feel, to explore, to be seen was something I tucked away. And if I dared let it rise to the surface, it came dressed in guilt. I think many girls are taught early that the worst thing they can be is too much, too loud, too curious, too emotional, too forward, too in touch with what they want, so we become less in control of our bodies, our needs, our voice. What nobody told us growing up is that desire is not a weakness, it's not an invitation for harm, and it certainly isn't shameful. It's simply part of being alive, and yet, for many women, this part of ourselves gets buried under silence, religion, control, and the unspoken rules of goodness. We learn that wanting physically, emotionally, sexually is dangerous. That our urges, unlike men's, make us vulnerable, suspicious, or broken. That if we express them, we must be prepared to take responsibility for everything that happens next. But what if that's not true? What if female desire in all its shapes and forms is not only natural, but sacred? I've seen how the world shifts when women start telling the truth about what they want. And not just the convenient, easy truths, but the complicated, messy, inconvenient ones. I've seen how healing begins when a woman stops apologizing for having a body that feels, for having skin that longs to be touched gently, for having a mind that craves more than safety, it craves recognition. I've watched friends step out of marriages and roles that were never truly theirs, not because they wanted drama, but because they wanted life, and I think that's brave. I think that's necessary. Desire isn't just about sex. It's about the hunger to be whole, to no longer split ourselves into what is acceptable and what must be hidden. And yes, that includes our sexuality, because to sever our sexual selves from our spiritual and emotional selves is to fracture who we are. When we deny our desire, we deny something ancient and intelligent inside us, something that's never been shameful, only shamed. The silence around this topic hasn't just hurt us. It's made generations of women doubt themselves. It's made them settle. It's made them confuse numbness with safety. And it's robbed us of what could have been not just fuller relationships, but fuller selves. So maybe the most radical thing we can teach the next generation of girls isn't just biology. It's this, that they can want, that they can say yes or no with equal power, that their desires are not liabilities, that they are not broken for feeling. In a world that tries to make women feel small for wanting more, maybe the most defiant, beautiful thing we can say is, I do want more and I am allowed to. I grew up, like many girls, thinking that consent was a moment. A binary, something you gave once or didn't, a door that, once opened, you couldn't close without seeming dramatic or unfair. It was framed as politeness, as obligation, and when I think back, I can count far too many times where I felt something inside me whispering no. But I smiled, nodded, moved forward anyway, because I didn't want to cause discomfort, because I had already said yes once, because I thought that was how it was supposed to go. But consent isn't a contract signed in permanent ink. It's a language, one we're not taught to speak fluently, especially not as women. It's about feeling safe, respected, and emotionally present in every step. And when that changes, so should everything else. You can be in the middle of an embrace, a kiss, a night, and realize your heart has left the room. That should matter, that does matter, and then there's the more complicated myth, the one we're fed through love songs, through movies, through the way we're taught to be women. The myth that once you love someone, once you're theirs, your body follows, that giving yourself over sexually, emotionally, is just part of the deal, that to withhold is to be cold, to be frigid, to be difficult. But here's the truth no one handed me as a young woman. Love doesn't entitle anyone to your body, not marriage, not romance, not even years of shared history, and it is not betrayal to say no. It is not cruelty to set a boundary. Real love doesn't shrink you or silence you. It waits for you, it listens, and if it doesn't, if it demands your body without listening to your voice, then it was never love at all. It was control dressed up as affection. I think we as women have been raised with the belief that saying no is selfish and saying yes is noble. But what if the real nobility lies in listening inward? What if the brave thing isn't the yes that keeps peace, but the no that protects your peace? The shame that so often surrounds these moments doesn't come from inside us. It was planted there, in classrooms that taught biology but not dignity, in relationships where we gave more than we had, in the way society teaches us to be agreeable first, safe second. But safety should always come first. Consent is not a moment, it's a rhythm, a living, breathing agreement that moves with us. And our bodies are not owed, even when we are loved, especially then, because true love doesn't take it honors. Maybe if I had been told that when I was younger, I would have been less afraid to pause, to stop, to leave. Maybe I would have known that my body wasn't currency, it was home, and that I don't need to justify protecting that home. If there's one lesson I hope we all carry forward and teach to our daughters, our sisters, our friends, it's this: you are not selfish for needing safety. You are not unlovable for drawing a line, and you never, ever owe your body to anyone, no matter how softly they say they love you. I think we were taught, or maybe just quietly shown, that sex was a mechanical act, a physical milestone, something that just happens. But what no one explained was that it can also echo through your entire being, your self-perception, your emotions, your sense of power or lack of it. We weren't given language for that. We were given diagrams and warnings. We were taught consequences, not connections. So it's no wonder so many of us arrived at adulthood feeling confused, ashamed, or detached. No one told us that sex could feel like intimacy or abandonment, that it could make you feel cherished or erased, that sometimes your body says yes while your heart says nothing at all. And when those experiences left us hollow or confused, we were told to be quiet, to be grateful that someone wanted us, or worse, we were measured by what we had or hadn't done. That's the other lie, that your worth is determined by your sexual history, too much, and you're shameful. Too little, and you're naive. We're trapped in a paradox that was never built for our liberation, only our compliance. So many women carry silent guilt for things they did or didn't do, thinking that every choice carved something irreversible into who they are. But none of it defines you. You are not a sum of yeses or nos. Your value is not something that rises or falls based on how many people have touched you. And you are not dirty, ruined, or impure. That language is not just outdated, it's violent. It trains girls to see their bodies as objects that lose value over time, rather than as homes that carry them through life. What we needed, what we still need, is education that doesn't punish us for being human. We need to teach sex not just as biology, but as a deeply personal, emotional experience. We need to say the word pleasure without flinching. We need to talk about what safety actually feels like, not just physically, but emotionally. We need to create spaces where girls can ask questions without fear of judgment, where they can say, "I don't know how I feel," and still be worthy of compassion, and most of all, we need to give them their voice. Not just the permission to speak, but the power to be heard, to say yes with joy, to say no with confidence, and to change their minds without apology, because silence has never kept us safe, it has only kept us compliant. I think back now and wonder what would have changed if I had heard someone say these things when I was 13 or 17 or even 25. What if someone had looked me in the eyes and said, "There is nothing wrong with you"? That your feelings are not too much, that your questions are not stupid, that you do not have to perform, hide, or explain. So if I can say anything clearly now, it is this: you are not broken, you are learning. You are allowed to take up space in your own story, and the more we tell the truth about sex, not the version written for textbooks, but the kind we live through, the more we free each other, not with shame, not with silence, but with softness and honesty, and that is a kind of education we all deserve. No one really explained how layered sex could be, that it isn't just a thing your body does, but something your mind and spirit carry long after. We were taught the physical risks, pregnancy, disease, but not the emotional weight or the way a single moment can stay lodged inside you like a sentence you never got to finish. We were taught facts, but not meaning. We were warned, but not prepared. No one told us that sometimes you can say yes and still feel a hollow spreading through you after, or that you can be touched in ways that feel like erasure, even if you never said no out loud. That sex done carelessly or without care for your personhood can leave you feeling like your body isn't yours anymore, and that is never your fault. Desire is human, but for girls, desire is something we're taught to monitor, hide, deny. We learn to mute our hunger, to smile modestly, to not text first, to feel ashamed for wanting more than we were offered. We inherit a story that says to be wanted is good, but to want is dangerous. It took me years to understand that wanting doesn't make you less. It makes you alive. Desire isn't something we need to fix. It's a part of our wholeness. It's where our voice begins. And when we shame women for wanting, what we're really doing is cutting them off from the center of themselves. And even when we begin to reclaim that desire, we still run into the myths around consent. The idea that once you've said yes, that's it, that consent is a contract, not a conversation, but real consent is fluid. It's something you can revoke, adjust, or redefine at any moment. It doesn't expire when love enters the room. It doesn't disappear when the lights go off. It doesn't weaken with time or closeness. It must always be earned, never assumed. Especially in relationships where the most insidious violations often happen quietly, slowly, with someone you trust. Love does not make you less deserving of boundaries. It should make those boundaries feel even more protected. That leads me to the hardest thing we're rarely told. Even in love, even in commitment, your body is still your own, not shared property, not proof of affection, not a prize for loyalty. You do not owe access to anyone. Not your boyfriend, not your husband, not someone who's waited patiently, not someone who says they love you. Love is not the currency that buys your body. Real love sees your no and doesn't push against it. It honors it, and if it doesn't, if you feel fear, guilt, or pressure instead of respect, it's not love, it's control. When I say these things now, I don't say them as someone who got it right. I say them as someone who had to unlearn so much, who carries regret and silence, who once thought giving in was the same as being wanted, or that staying quiet was the same as being strong. But what I've learned and what I offer now is that truth is always kinder than silence. Even when it hurts, even when it's messy, you don't need permission to speak your truth. You just need to believe that your truth is worthy of being heard, and that your body is never something you owe. It's something you are. We talk about sex like it's an event. Something that begins and ends in a bedroom, something measurable, but it doesn't end there. It lingers in your skin, in your memories, in the way you look at yourself in the mirror the next morning. No one told me that part, that you could do everything right and still feel like something was wrong, because it isn't about the act, it's about how safe you felt doing it, if you felt seen or just used. If you were present or just performing, that part stays with you, and I wish someone had said, sex is not just what your body does, it's what your heart carries. Desire, when you're a woman, comes with its own punishment. We're allowed to be wanted, but not to want, and so we learn early to split ourselves, one part that feels and one part that hides. We laugh off comments that make us uncomfortable. We pretend we're okay with things we're not. We say yes to keep the peace, and underneath all of it is the idea that our own desire is suspicious, even shameful. But what if it isn't? What if wanting connection, or intimacy, or even just touch, doesn't make us less? What if it makes us more whole? I had to unlearn the belief that desire was something to fear. I had to teach myself that wanting isn't dangerous, it's human. We also need to unlearn how we talk about consent, as if it's a contract signed in ink, never to be revised. But consent is not a checkbox, it's a living thing. You can say yes and then change your mind. You can say yes in one moment and feel unsafe in the next, and that shift matters. Your discomfort doesn't need to be explained or justified to be respected. Especially in relationships where so often consent is taken for granted, expected rather than earned. Love does not cancel out your right to choose. In fact, love should make your choices feel even more sacred. And still, even within love, we are taught that we owe something, that affection is a debt and our bodies are the payment, that staying means saying yes, but you owe no one your body, not your partner, not your past self, not the version of you who once said yes and now feels unsure. Your body is not a transaction. It's not a prize. It is not proof of love. It is yours, only and always yours. And finally, there's the myth that haunts so many of us, that our sexual history defines our worth, that we are somehow less if we've said yes too many times or too little, that we can be measured by what we've done or refused. But this is a lie told to keep us small. There is no virtue in shame, and there is no shame in choice. You are not the sum of your yeses or your nos. You are not ruined. You are not late. You are not too much. I say all of this not as someone who always knew better, but as someone who has learned the hard way that silence doesn't protect you. It only delays the pain. What I hope now is that we learn to tell these truths earlier, louder, and without apology, because every time a woman claims her story, her body, and her right to change, she gives permission for others to do the same. And that is how healing begins, not in shame, but in the quiet defiance of truth. What no one told me was that sex might feel less like an event and more like an echo, that it might leave a mark even when no one sees it, that it could feel safe and loving one day and confusing the next. We're often told what sex is biologically, but not what it feels like to carry it with you. The awkwardness, the pressure, the moments you weren't ready but said yes anyway because it felt easier. No one explained that even in the absence of violence, there can still be grief. Sex is not just physical, it's emotional, psychological, and sometimes spiritual. When we ignore that, we leave girls and women feeling broken for simply feeling deeply. And we do feel deeply. We desire, we want things, not just sex, but intimacy, tenderness, touch, understanding. And yet we've been taught to fear our own desire, that if we want too much, we'll lose respect. That if we speak openly, we'll be called names, so we hide it, we repress it, and we confuse silence for safety. I wish I had been told that desire is not shameful, it's human, that wanting connection, wanting pleasure, doesn't diminish our dignity. It affirms our aliveness, but even when we do want something, we are rarely taught what real consent looks like, not just a yes or a no, but a conversation, something ongoing, something alive. Consent isn't a line you cross once. It's something that should exist at every step, in every pause, and it should be able to change. We should be able to say, I thought I was okay, but I'm not anymore, and be heard, not punished, not guilted. Real consent makes space for discomfort. It honors hesitation. It listens for the unspoken, and even in love, even in long-term commitment, we owe no one our bodies, not our partners, not our past selves, not people who are nice to us. Love doesn't earn access. It doesn't cancel boundaries. A relationship built on respect doesn't flinch when you say no. We've been conditioned to think that giving someone our body is an expression of love. But the deeper truth is this: love that demands instead of listens is not love, it's entitlement. It's also important to say this clearly and without apology: your sexual past, or lack of it, does not define you. We're so often measured by it, too much and we're judged, too little and we're pitied. But what you've done or haven't done doesn't speak to your value. There is no moral scorecard. Every woman deserves dignity, no matter her history. We are not statistics. We are not stories other people get to write for us. And if we're going to change any of this, we need to talk differently. We need to teach differently. Real sex education isn't just about biology. It's about body autonomy, about knowing how to say yes and how to say no, about understanding safety and pleasure and power. It's about giving girls their voice before the world teaches them to lose it. I didn't grow up with these truths handed to me. I had to find them scattered across years of confusion and silence, and maybe that's why I share them now, not because I figured it all out, but because I didn't. And I know I'm not the only one. We owe the next generation more than warnings. We owe them truth, tenderness, and permission to take up space in their bodies, in their choices, in their voices, not someday.
Now,